Good evening, Patriots. We are here and we are live. Had a couple of technical difficulties, but I'm pretty sure we have made it. So tonight we're going to talk about Jim Jordan and the speakership. Now, there's a million things going on in the world. This is probably one of the worst times in history not to have a Speaker of the House. We got war raging in Israel that threatens United States involvement. That is a definite probability in the coming future, especially if Hezbollah moves forward and Iran was barking off threats at the United States, which it seems to have now completely backed off and ran away with its tail between its legs. And that is definitely a smart move on Iran's point of view. However, in order to take the necessary steps to resolve this situation, we need a Speaker of the House. Now, Mr. Scalise was nominated and talked about it and then backed out of the race because he just does not have a shot in hell of winning the speakership. He's not the kind of conservative leadership we need at this point. Right now, we need a true conservative who believes in conservative values and pushing the right agenda for the people. Now, Jim Jordan was one of those candidates during the Tea Party that where the big red wave came and what Barack Obama had called a shellacking. Now, the Tea Party was formed right around the same time as the Affordable Health Care Act was talked about and passed. Now, the Affordable Health Care Act is one of the biggest socialist programs in the United States besides maybe Social Security. So, that infuriated the majority of the population because the majority of the population did not want that. That was something that was rammed down the throats of American citizens, and it's still something that is fought about today. Now, Jim Jordan came on, and John Boehner, who was the Speaker of the House at the time in 2011, we all thought he was going to be our saving grace. He was one of those hardcore conservatives, and he turned around and just became buddy-buddy with Barack Obama, and a lot of things were done that we wish that we could undo. We've seen this a lot. We've seen this a lot in the Conservative Party. We've seen rhinos all over the place, kind of like Mr. Mike Rogers, who said that he would not support Jim Jordan for speakership, and now under political pressure, he has turned. He had said that he would support Democrats in electing a leader, which would most definitely be Nancy Pelosi. Now, what kind of conservative would ever want to have Nancy Pelosi as the Speaker of the House, or somebody like that, or somebody who's not a conservative when you hold the majority? That's who becomes the Speaker of the House, is the majority leader of the House. Now, Mike Rogers, this guy lives in the middle of one of the biggest red areas in Alabama. His constituents don't agree with that. I can most definitely guarantee it. So there's been a lot of slander. There's been a lot of propaganda, as always, and lies about Jim Jordan. And one of the biggest ones would be my personal favorite Democrat, who I just love to roast all the time, which is AOC. I mean, this is somebody who doesn't even know their ABCs, and they're a member of Congress. She looks like a deer in the headlights anytime anybody asks her a question. She's an absolute disgrace to this country and does not belong sitting in the halls of Congress. But nevertheless, Jim Jordan was about 50 votes short yesterday. Today, he's between 10 and 20 votes short, which means that he will most certainly get the votes required to become Speaker of the House, and the vote is tomorrow. Kevin McCarthy is even supporting him, the guy who just got ousted. So AOC tweeted this today. The idea that the GOP are about to nominate Jim Jordan, of all people, yes, January 6th, Jim Jordan, ban all abortions from conception, Jim Jordan, sexual abuse cover-up, Jim Jordan, for Speaker of the House in an attempt to save their majority they deserve to lose. Listen, we all know January 6th was a hoax, right? It was not as bad as it was made out to be. I've said it a million times. We've watched the videos. We have looked at it and we have analyzed it thoroughly on this show, and it was not as bad as they made it appear on the news. Now, that does not mean that there were Republicans, conservatives, Trumpsters out there doing things they never should have done. And yes, some of them do belong in jail. But the overwhelming majority of them were there not to cause trouble. A lot of them were getting upset at the ones who were causing trouble. Yet, some of these people who did nothing are still sitting in jail because of Congress people like AOC, because it's their political agenda. So they're going to fight to keep them there. They're going to push this January 6th thing until the end of the earth. So this is what I have to say to your tweet there, AOC. Flop. The idea that GOP are about to nominate Jim Jordan, of all people. Yes, January 6th, Jim Jordan. But, like what? Like he was there? Like he was kicking down doors? I don't think he was there kicking down doors. Ban all abortions. I mean, banning abortions is not a bad thing. I mean, I guess to people who sympathize with terrorists who kill Jewish babies, maybe that's a bad thing for them. Sexual abuse cover-up. Jim Jordan. Now, this is an allegation that just is now coming out. This guy's been in Congress since 2011 for, 12 years. Nobody heard of this. All of a sudden, Speaker of the House all over the place. If you don't know about that, we're going to try to get that in this show. He was a wrestling coach. The allegation is that he knew about maybe some abuse that was going on. And I don't even think the allegation is that he covered it up. I think the allegation is that he just ignored it or didn't realize it. I don't know. But the allegation is not him sexually abusing anybody, unlike the majority of Democrats that we have in office. So this here is DC Drano on Twitter. You should follow him. He's pretty funny. Mike Rogers, like I said, was opposing Jim Jordan. And DC Drano said that he's just going to publicly roast him on Twitter until he reverses his decision. And he said that now that Mike Rogers has agreed to vote for Jim Jordan, I will no longer be making any more hilarious jokes about his rug. Very funny. Follow that guy on Twitter. I do now, by the way. So that is what is going on. Now, without a Speaker of the House, we basically cannot vote on anything. We cannot get legislation passed. We cannot get emergency funds passed for situations like the Israelis or even the innocent citizens of Gaza. These are problems, and that's why there's so much pressure to get somebody in there, which is why Jim Jordan is most likely going to receive this. I predict that he will be the next Speaker of the House. It would be highly unlikely that he will not. So let's watch this video on the sexual abuse allegations.
A college wrestling referee says he complained to Ohio State University's wrestling coaches about sexual misconduct by one of the team doctors, but they did nothing about it. One of the assistant coaches at the time was current Congressman Jim Jordan. The claims are part of a lawsuit filed this week by 43 men who say they were sexually assaulted, abused, molested, or harassed by Dr. Richard Strauss. Congressman Jordan has repeatedly denied knowing about the abuse allegations. Gene Casares joins us with the very latest. So this ref says he told Jordan directly about the alleged sexual misconduct,
along with the head coach for the wrestlers. And this lawsuit is 165 pages in length. This is the complaint. It goes on and on of 43 alleged victims.
43 alleged victims. 43 alleged victims.
And here's what's amazing, because this is a federal suit. They are only suing one defendant, Ohio State University. Title IX allegations they have, violations. But what is so fascinating about this and so really horrendous is that they cite so many medical professionals, doctors, assistant physicians, nurses, at least one in this, saying that they told those people and they did nothing.
So essentially the lawsuit is that somebody told Jim Jordan, right, who is an assistant coach. He's not the head coach. He's not the head of the organization. He's not somebody really in a position of a lot of power to handle it. And that he did that he did nothing. I mean, I don't know. Did they say it to him directly? Did they say it to him in passing? Did you say, hey, did you hear about did you hear about this may be going on and he doesn't know what to do? I mean, there's a million scenarios there. It's not like 43 people are accusing him of sexual assault. It's not like he's sniffing every child that gets within an arm's reach of him, like Joe Biden. You know, but that's the political landscape that we live in. So as you know, he has been on the House Judiciary Committee. He was also the founder of the Freedom Caucus. And he was one of the ones responsible for pushing John Boehner out of the speakership. So this was him holding a hearing in New York on the victims of violent crime in Manhattan. Because as you know, the DA, Alvin Bragg, he went ahead and filed this ridiculous felony charge against Donald Trump. It was an absolute joke. It's a disgrace. It's a disaster. That he paid money to a porn star to keep her quiet. I mean, isn't that what isn't that like what happens with prostitutes? You pay them and then they don't say anything and you don't say anything. Isn't that kind of the deal? And it wasn't even prostitution. She got sued by him and she had to pay him like $50,000 or something. But the caveat to this is that he is there for paying hush money, right? He's being indicted for felony some stupid thing that really has nothing to do with the case. And at this point, it looks like it's really not going to go anywhere. It doesn't look like it's going to go anywhere. But Jim Jordan goes to New York because Alvin Bragg continuously and routinely allows convicted felons, armed robbers, murderers, drug dealers out on the street on no bond. And these people and the victims of this actual crime want answers.
Goldman, whose district we're in, and Mr. Espaillat. Per an agreement with Mr. Nadler and without objection, these members will be permitted to participate in today's hearing for only the purpose of asking questions of the witnesses. Each side will have an additional 5 minutes for these members to question the witnesses. The chair now recognizes himself for an opening statement.
Mr. Chairman, I have a unanimous consent request.
Gentleman from Florida is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, I seek unanimous consent. I understand Mr. Alba may be utilizing the services of an interpreter today, and so that the interpretation time would occur off the clock so that we might be able to ask questions of Mr. Alba.
Without objection, so ordered. While we're speaking of time, I know we have to be back in the Capitol tonight for some votes, so the chair will probably be pretty darn strict with the 5-minute rule, but we want to make sure all our witnesses get their full 5 minutes and members get their time to question. Today's hearing is about the administration of justice and keeping communities safe, something that has always been a central focus of the House Judiciary Committee. Our witnesses today have felt the effects of crime up close and personal. They've been victimized by a justice system that cares more about political correctness than punishing the criminals who've harmed them and harmed their family. We thank them for being here and sharing their story. Their stories are emblematic of a city that's lost its way when it comes to fighting a crime and upholding the law.
There is no upholding the law in New York City unless you're Donald Trump. Then they're going to come after you for everything that you got. There is no upholding the law in New York City. People are victimized. They are hurt. Police officers who try to do something about it are arrested and convicted. They are disciplined. They don't even want to be there, which is why we have had a mass exodus of police officers in New York City.
As we all know, fairness under the law is a bedrock principle of American democracy. In this country, justice is supposed to be blind, regardless of race, religion, or creed. However, here in Manhattan, the scales of justice are weighed down by politics. For the district attorney, justice isn't blind. It's about looking for opportunities to advance a political agenda, a radical political agenda. Rather than enforcing the law, the DA is using his office to do the bidding of left-wing campaign funders. He's taken a soft-on-crime approach to the real criminals. One of Mr. Bragg's first actions upon taking office in January of 2022 was to put out a memo that directed his assistant district attorneys not to prosecute certain crimes, including trespassing and resisting arrest. The memo also stated that armed robberies should not be prosecuted as felonies. Instead, they were to be considered as misdemeanor larceny unless someone was shot during the course of the robbery. Thank goodness, after a backlash from police groups and the public, Mr. Bragg agreed to prosecute some robberies as felonies, but left the rest of the memo in place. The president of NYPD Detectives Endowment Association said, quote, "Bragg gives criminals the roadmap to freedom from prosecution and control of our streets. In Bragg's Manhattan, you can resist arrest, deal drugs, obstruct arrest, and even carry a gun to get away with it. And guess what happened under this new policy? More crime. In 2022, Mr. Bragg's first year as district attorney, New York City saw a 23% surge in major crimes. Felony assaults rose 13%, robberies spiked 26%, burglaries in New York City went up 23%, grand larcenies were up 26%, and
But if you're Donald Trump and you pay off a porn star, you get upgraded to a felony. So what Jim Jordan's doing is that he's pointing out the political corruption. This is a George Soros-backed district attorney. These guys have gone ham on each other. I mean, they have sued each other. They have gone after each other, both legally and publicly and politically. And Jim Jordan has been leading the charge on this. I mean, like or say what you want about Donald Trump. What this particular case, we'll just stick to this case in New York, is completely frivolous. I mean, it's garbage. It's obvious political corruption at its worst, at its absolute worst. Let's try to find another video here.
well, I was just going to say, Ms. Harrison, are you grandstanding?
No, and it seems like, as Madeline mentioned, the other side is here on taxpayer dollars. The least that they could do is listen to our side of it, ask us questions. They've brought witnesses in to counter our horrific stories for their agenda. All they want to do is talk about gun legislation. Well, you can have all the gun legislation on the books, but if it's not enforced, which is what Alvin Bragg is doing, then it's not going to matter and people are going to die. And that's why we're here. And I appreciate your oversight because we do need help. And if they continue to ignore it, people are going to continue to die.
Is this committee victimizing you, Ms. Brame, as Democrat said?
Absolutely not. This committee has given me a platform, has given me a seat at the table to be able to tell my story and raise awareness for victims all over, not just New York City, but all over this country, especially from Philadelphia.
Ms. Fisher, if the guns are the problem, why didn't the Democrats fix it?
The Democrats have worked hard to pass
Well, they had
comprehensive.
control. They controlled all the House, all the Senate. They still have the White House. Why didn't they fix it last Congress?
We
If the
need
answer is-
comprehensive gun violence prevention legislation to be passed, and this Congress has the ability and the capacity to do that.
I was in the Congress last session.
So
Mr.
do
Natter
it-
was
we
the
can do
chair.
it
They
now.
tried. They could have passed. They didn't pass
We
it.
need Congress to go back to
Would the gentleman
Washington and
yield?
pass strong
Mr.
gun violence
Would the
prevention
gentleman yield?
legislation.
No, I'm going to go to Mr. DiGiacomo. Mr. DiGiacomo, are you grandstanding?
Not at all. Honestly,
You're
I'm
here
here.
representing the detectives of this great town, right?
Absolutely, and very proud of it. I am not here other than to ask for help. Someone just said that we can't do anything here. Well, if the people of the United States Congress can't do anything to help us, we're in a lot of trouble, because there are some powerful people around this table that could help and stop the violence and make the streets safer for the people of New York City and the police officers and detectives that serve them.
Thank you.
We're here for help.
Thank
We
you.
need help.
I think the gentleman.
Here's New Yorkers coming to Jim Jordan and the House Judiciary Committee because of just this lack of leadership from Democrats. I mean, you see that all over the country. You see it all over the country. I mean, California, one of the worst states to live in. Chicago, one of the worst cities in the country to live in. New York City, one of the worst cities in the country to live in. I'm from New York. I love New York. I miss New York, but I hate what Democrats have done to it. It's just a complete, utter crime fest, and nobody's held accountable for what they do. So what do? They just keep doing it. But if you're Donald Trump, if you are Donald Trump, then you spit on the sidewalk, you get a ticket. And that is not fair use of the law. So my prediction is that we are going to see Jim Jordan as the new Speaker of the House, and this country needs that. We need a strong conservative figure inside leading the House to pass legislation and keep these radical Democrats at bay, right? The majority of conservative people, voters, want Jim Jordan as Speaker of the House. They don't want Steve Scalise. Nobody wants that. The swamp wants that. The insiders want that. The members who were corrupt want that. That's what they want, because they want that system to just keep moving forward as it is. Jim Jordan is a disruptor. He's always been a disruptor. He got into Congress on a disruptor movement in 2011 with the Tea Party, which was the American citizens saying, we're tired of what you're doing. You do not have the authority to tell us that we have to pay for health care. You're way overstepping your bounds. And he has come in and he has had a consistent record of fighting the system. And that's exactly what we need. Guys, thank you very much for tuning in. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Smash that like button. Make sure you download this podcast if you're on Apple, Spotify, Audible, Amazon Music. We are everywhere. Thank you very much for tuning in, and we will see you next time.